The first man to die at Raven Creek shouldn't have even been there that morning. His name was Lewis. He swapped shifts for an hour of sleep, and that small trade bought him a grave. I can still hear the sound that followed, sharper in memory than any gunfire. That day began like every other, with the generator coughing through its 9th heartbeat. The damn thing never kept rhythm. 9 steady hums, 1 dry choke, and we'd laughed about it for weeks, called it the pulse of Raven Creek. But when it stopped, silence meant something was wrong. The air always smelled of diesel and iron, soaked into our clothes until you couldn't tell where the fuel ended and the cold began. Mist hung in the pine around the outpost, thick and wet, the only hint that life still lingered in that valley. My fingers were stiff on the rifle, slick with dew. I'd gotten used to counting my breathing, 8 in, 8 out, to keep my hands from shaking. Later, that count became the only thing that kept me sane. When the first flash burst from the ridge that morning, instinct took over. I counted through it, 1 to 8, and moved before I even realized what I was doing. We were just 8 men then, a detached squad from 2nd Platoon, Bravo Company, 42nd Infantry, dropped into a forgotten corner of Korangal Valley. Command called it a logistics node. We called it a death trap disguised with sandbags. The outpost sat at a bend in the river, boxed by steep ridges, perfect for ambushes. Every resupply had to crawl across that single creek ford. We had 1 sputtering generator, a single M240 on the west wall, 2 radios that hated the weather, and a field kitchen that smelled like rust. Everything else, we built ourselves. Esco walls, towers cut from fallen logs, wires strung by hand. Up close, you could see how fragile it really was. The ground was too wet to dig deep, so we lined trenches with boards that sank every time it rained. On paper, our mission was to keep the route open between Camp Reston and the village clusters to the south. In reality, it meant sitting still, waiting for trouble, and pretending that counted as progress. Each night we logged noises echoing through the hills, sometimes goats, sometimes men whispering under the cover of fog. 4 hours on post, 4 off. Lewis always took dawn, said the fog rising from the ridges helped him think. The rest of us just tried to sleep through the generator's uneven rhythm. 9 beats, 1 cough, over and over. Late April, the report started changing. Command said Raven Creek was active, enemy scouts moving south, testing outposts like ours. We were told to stay alert, that was all. No reinforcements, no upgrades, just the same 8 names on the board. The resupply that month was already a week overdue. Hanley, our staff sergeant, split us into 2 teams, mine covering west and south sectors. We had a marksman rifle, 1 M249, and an AT-4, older than some of the men holding it. Every night, I checked the claymores, cleared the firing lanes, logged the grids. I kept a small notebook, frequencies, coordinates, numbers I could trust. 8 lines per page, always neat. The order helped me stay centered. On May 10th, we started seeing shapes moving along the north ridge. Same hour, 2 nights in a row. Never close enough to fire, just there, watching. Hanley reported it up the chain, but the answer was the same one we always got. Continue observation. Do not engage unless fired upon. Meaning, sit tight and wait to die quietly. We all knew the outpost wasn't built to last. It was built to look occupied. That generator's cough was the only heartbeat the place had. Each night it echoed through the trees, louder in the creek. I'd catch myself counting breaths with it, 8 in, 8 out, matching rhythm with the machine. That rhythm broke the morning Lewis took his trade. When the shot came, we barely heard it over the creek. By the time we reached him, he was slumped against the wall, eyes open, blood already dark. Afterward, the air inside Raven Creek felt different, heavier, like the silence itself had weight. We gathered around the radio hut, waiting for battalion to call in. Hanley read the report from his notebook, voice flat. 1 KIA, no enemy contact observed. That was it. 1 line, 1 loss. The official version would say, Lewis was hit by an unknown sniper during a routine watch. End of story. But none of us believed it was random. Whoever fired that shot had studied us. Same spot, same time, perfect distance. Mason, our forward observer, found the shell casing later, 100 meters uphill, buried under damp needles. An old Enfield round, polished clean. A patient shooter, maybe local. Maybe someone who'd known those woods long before we came to spoil them. Command told us to tighten security and increase patrols. No extra manpower, no supplies, just us. After that, I took Lewis's post. It faced north toward the bend where the creek vanished under fog. The generator sat right below my wall, its uneven hum a constant reminder that we were 1 breakdown away from darkness. Sometimes the machine skipped its cough, and that silence made my skin crawl worse than gunfire. By the 12th, we were sleeping in shifts so thin they barely counted. Every night we swore we saw movement, on thermals, in shadows, through glass, but nothing held. The only updates came from a drone team out of Reston, sending back grainy footage twice a week. Just flickers between trees. No weapons confirmed. Nothing actionable. Hanley started talking about sweeping the ridge. I thought he'd lost it. Splitting 8 men, half to guard, half to climb into an ambush funnel was suicide. But Higher wanted presence. They wanted movement on a map, so we planned it. May 14th, dawn patrol, up the western slope, recon, and return by nightfall. Simple, clean, on paper. That night, I couldn't sleep. The smell of diesel sat heavy in my lungs. The generator thudded through its 9th beat, steady for once. I matched it with my breathing. 8 in, 8 out, until dawn began to bleed behind the ridge. Before stepping off, I logged our last fuel count. 1 barrel, maybe 2 days left. The supply convoy was 5 days overdue, road washed out somewhere south. If anything went wrong, no one was coming. We packed light, 7 mags, a smoke, a frag, 1 MRE, 2 liters of water each. Mason carried the radio. I took the marksman rifle. Hanley kept the M249. No AT-4 this time. It was too heavy for the climb. At 0500, the sky started to glow gray. We crossed the creek single file, water biting our knees, cold enough to steal breath. The rock smelled like iron. Every step my boots filled heavier. I counted the rhythm again, 8 forward, 8 back. Behind us, the generator faded, its pulse disappearing into the trees. 9 beats, 1 cough. The last time I'd ever hear it alive. We reached the first rise before the sun cleared the ridge. That's when I saw it. A single wire stretched low across the trail, half buried in mud. Not old, fresh. That's when I knew we weren't the ones waiting for trouble. Trouble had been waiting for us. The wire gleamed faintly in the gray light, thin as a vein running through mud. Hanley's hand went up, a closed fist, and the patrol froze mid-step. No one spoke. The creek behind us murmured, steady and indifferent, a sound too calm for what we were seeing. I dropped to a knee, brushed aside the pine needles, and found where the line disappeared into the soil. The ends were new, no rust, no wear. Whoever said it had done so within hours. Mason crouched beside me, his face tight beneath the brim of his helmet. Single 82 or homemade, he muttered, voice barely more than breath. We didn't need more explanation. We'd seen setups like that before. One step in the wrong place, and the world turns inside out. Hanley eased back, signaling for everyone to take cover. We pulled behind the roots of an old stump while he marked the grid on his map, lips moving silently as he read coordinates. When he called it in, the response came like always, flat, distant, meaningless. Log it, avoid, and continue patrol. No EOD, no support, just 8 men staring at a trap and a radio that might as well have been a brick. We circled wide, climbing higher along the slope. The ground was slick, pine needles soft underfoot, every step giving a faint hiss of water. I kept my breath in rhythm, 8 forward, pause, 8 forward again. Counting had become my anchor in that place, something to keep the noise out of my head. Halfway up, we found the second sign, a shallow firing pit carved into the ridge, still warm, empty brass, half-smoked cigarettes, a rag folded under leaves. The earth smelled like sweat and dung oil. Whoever had been there hadn't left long ago. Hanley peered through his scope toward the valley. From where we stood, Raven Creek looked small enough to cushion a fist. The radio hut's roof caught the early light, a bright, fragile square, surrounded by shadows. Mason tried raising base again, fiddling with the dial, but the headset only spat static. He switched channels, no difference. Signal's wrong, he whispered. We're still in range. The forest swallowed sound. No birds, no wind, just that low hum of the creek far below. Hanley ordered a halt. We formed the perimeter, rifles leveled downslope. The air carried that strange scent again. Wet pine mixed with something sharper, almost chemical, like old fuel leaking through moss. It made the back of my throat sting. Then Mason stiffened, eyes on the ridge opposite us. Movement, he said. 3 figures, crouched low, gliding through the trees. They were too coordinated to be locals, too calm for scavengers. Hanley held his palm up. Wait. The shapes didn't shoot. They just mirrored our line, shadow for shadow, moving parallel. My heart followed the count. 8 beats, pause, 1 skip, same rhythm as the generator back home. That made me nervous in a way bullets never could. For 20 minutes, they stayed with us, always just out of clear view. Then, as if on cue, they vanished. Not retreating, just gone. Mason switched the radio back on. For a second, the static cleared, and a voice crackled through. Unidentified movement north of compound. Then nothing. Hanley lowered the handset slowly, eyes on the valley. From here, the outpost looked like a toy fort in a box of smoke. The generator's exhaust curled upward, thin and steady. "They're watching both sides," he said quietly. No one disagreed. The air grew heavier, the diesel scent drifting stronger from below. My stomach nodded. The whole valley felt wound tight, waiting for something to break. Hanley gave the signal to move back toward the creek. We slid down through brush, branches scratching our sleeves. My watch read just under 2 hours since we'd first crossed the ford. That was when the first rifle cracked. The sound was flat and sharp, echoing down the ridge like a whip. Bark exploded above Hanley's head. He dropped and rolled behind a log, shouting, "Contact, rear!" The rest of us dove for cover. Another shot came lower, closer. Whoever they were, they had the range locked in. Silence followed, thicker than the smoke. I steadied my rifle against the dirt, heartbeat syncing with breath. 8 in, 8 out, and scanned through the scope. Nothing. No flash, no silhouette, just trees staring back. Hanley motioned to Mason. "Mark position." Mason adjusted the radio again. Static, dead air. He smacked the side of the unit, cursed under his breath, tried another frequency. Still nothing. We were cut off. The slope above us was too steep to flank, too choked with brush to climb without showing our heads. Only one option: fight low and move fast. Hanley pointed to me and 2 others. "Cover fire," he said. "Move by twos." I squeezed the trigger. Short burst across the ridge. Dirt spat up from the impacts, but no return fire. Using the noise as cover, we slid down the hill, crawling over roots slick with water. A glint flashed left, a mirror, or the reflection off a scope. Someone was tracking us. "Left ridge," I hissed. Hanley nodded, signaled suppression. 3 rifles opened up, then the M249 roared. The force filled with the metallic rhythm of controlled bursts. Seconds later, the opposite ridge lit up with muzzle flashes. At least half a dozen, maybe more. Rounds shredded leaves, slammed into trunks, tore through the air with that dry, snapping sound that never leaves your head. "Back to the creek," Hanley shouted. No time to argue. We bounded down the slope 2 by 2, firing, ducking, firing again. The mud turned slick beneath us, choking our boots. My mouth filled with the taste of dirt and copper. The smell of burnt oil from their rifles drifted through the smoke. When we hit the lower trail, I looked back. Orange sparks danced across the upper ridge. 6 shooters, maybe 8. The valley echoed like a drum. Mason finally caught a signal, broken, desperate. Raven Creek, under fire, north perimeter, breach, then static swallowed it whole. Harmony's face went hard. "They drew us out," he said flatly. The realization settled like ice. The tripwire, the staged contact, all bait. We'd been lured up the slope while the real strike hit home. We needed to move fast. The creek was our only route back. Wide open ground flanked by both ridges. Hanley looked straight at me. "You're on point, quiet and quick." I nodded and stepped into the current. The water was colder now, swollen from upstream melt. Each step sent shards of ice through my legs. The noise of our gear clattering seemed deafening. Halfway across, a faint sound reached us. The heartbeat of the generator, weak but steady. 9 hums, 1 cough. That sound had always meant safety. Now it felt like a warning. We were 10 yards from the far bank when the first mortar hit. It landed upstream, a plume of dirt and water rising like a geyser. The second came closer. The third found its mark. The ground leapt under me. My ears went hollow. Dirt rained down, hot and sharp. I tasted ash, heard shouting that didn't sound like my own voice. Mason was screaming into the radio again. "South wall compromised. Multiple impacts. Raven Creek was being torn apart." Hanley crawled beside me through the mud, eyes wide but steady. "Move," he yelled. We ran. Mortars boomed behind us, pounding the valley in rhythmic bursts. When we reached the perimeter, smoke rolled over the walls like fog on fire. The wire was shredded. The south wall sagged inward, sandbags spilling their guts. Diesel and gunpowder mingled in the air, thick enough to taste. The generator was silent, but still warm. The fuel line had been cut clean, not by shrapnel, by a blade. That was the moment it hit us. This wasn't chaos. It was choreography. Someone had planned every beat. Hanley barked orders. 2 men to the north tower, the rest with him at the command hut. I climbed the west wall to get eyes on the ridge. The creek glowed orange with reflection. Smoke pooled low, hugging the ground. Mason fought with the radio again, then froze. A voice came through, steady, calm, not English, just a few clipped words before cutting off. He looked at me, face pale. "They're listening," he said. The channels were jammed now, every one. Handheld jammers scattered through the hills. That meant training. That meant intent. Hanley gathered us in the courtyard, his voice hard and quiet. We hold what's left. No patrols, no signals. We wait for Reston. I could tell he didn't believe rescue was coming soon. I checked the ammo crates, half empty. The resupply that never arrived was now a ghost story. We set perimeter shifts again. I took west, as always. The ridge was darker now, the sun struggling to break through smoke. Every motion in the trees twisted my stomach. Then Mason called from the hut, "You need to see this." On the drone feed, blurry gray figures filled the ridge above. Dozens, not 3 or 4, moving slow, deliberate. The attack hadn't started yet. They were just getting into position. We watched until the feed froze and went black. Connection lost. Hanley leaned over the map, finger tracing the bend of the creek. "They'll come from the rear slope," he said, "behind a generator. The one place we'd never fortified." I felt the chill of it. We had walked right into someone's plan, and the next move was theirs. The ground behind the generator was soft and uneven, broken by roots that twisted through the slope like veins. 4 of us moved there under Hanley's orders, carrying sandbags, spare ammo, and the last 2 flares. The other half stayed behind to cover the main walls. The air reeked of fuel and ash, the kind of smell that sticks in your skin no matter how long you scrub. I led the rear team, boots sinking deep into the mud. Every step made a faint sucking sound, too loud in the silence. Above, the pines swayed without making noise. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. We reached the bottom of the incline, where the creek looped around the outpost's blind side. I could still see the smoke rising from the generator pit, curling through the fog. Like a signal, no one would answer. We set our sandbags in a crude arc along the slope, facing up toward the ridge. I took position behind a fallen tree trunk, propping my rifle on it. The forest ahead looked normal at first, just green-black shadows layered with mist, but there was something off about it, a stillness that didn't belong. Then I saw it. A thin line stretched low across the path between 2 boulders, barely visible. Not a tripwire, decord. Fresh, clean, talk. I didn't even have time to warn the others before the radio crackled behind me. Short static, then a calm, foreign voice. The same one from earlier, soft, deliberate. A few clipped words we couldn't understand. Mason's face drained of color. "They're talking to each other," he whispered. That was when it hit me. The ridge wasn't their main focus anymore. We weren't the targets. They were setting the stage to erase the entire outpost. The explosion came seconds later. A single sharp pop, then a deep, rolling crack that swallowed the earth. The ground lifted like a wave, throwing dirt, rock, and men into the air. I hit hard, my ears ringing, mouth full of grit. The air was thick with dust and the copper taste of blood. For a moment, everything was muffled, just a low hum like the world was underwater. Hanley's voice broke through the ringing. "Positions! Hold your sectors!" I crawled back to my tree trunk. The slope above us was gone, replaced by a crater belching smoke. Whoever wired that line had timed it perfectly. We'd been standing right where they wanted us. Figures moved in the haze above, dark shapes, steady and deliberate, rifles at the ready. They didn't charge. They advanced like they had all the time in the world. Mason shouted that the main radio line was cut. The blast had severed it. He switched to the handheld, but the signal was jammed again. Only static. We were deaf and blind. Hanley ran the line, checking each man, his calm anchoring us, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew this was no small attack. I squeezed the trigger, sent a few rounds into the smoke. The tracers vanished into the gray. Return fire cracked back seconds later, snapping through branches, chewing the dirt inches from my hands. My heart kept its rhythm, 8 in, 8 out, and I fired again. Hanley's command came short and sharp. "Fall back to the inner wire." We moved in pairs, leapfrogging downhill while others covered. It was textbook, but hopeless. They had the height, the angles, and we had the ground collapsing beneath us. By the time we reached the inner perimeter, 2 men were down. One was shrapnel across his back, another hit clean through the leg. We dragged them behind the command hut, Mason already pulling the medkit open, his hands steady but pale. The air stank of blood and iodine. Behind us, the generator pit still smoldered. No sound, no heartbeat left. I could hear the creak faintly through the ringing, but its rhythm was off. Broken, irregular, wrong. Hanley spread the map across a crate, tracing the ridgeline with his finger. "We can't hold long," he said, his voice low. "We take the high ground by the ford, or they'll crush us here." He was right. The ridge above the creek was the only vantage left, and if the enemy took it, we were boxed in. The plan shifted fast. Half the squad would stay to defend the outpost, buying time. The rest, Hanley, Mason, 2 others, and me, would move toward the ridge to secure overwatch and call air support if the comms came back online. We packed what was left of the ammunition and flares. I checked my rifle, 3 magazines, 1 half spent, 8 rounds chambered clean. I counted them out in my head. It kept my focus sharp. The valley glowed orange as smoke and sunlight mixed in the air, turning the creek into a sheet of moving fire. The smell of diesel hung thick, even though the tanks were empty. It was like the soil itself exhaled it now. We slipped through the breach in the wire, keeping low. The creek was shallow but tinted red from reflection, the water rippling with every mortar thump in the distance. Mason caught a faint transmission. Air support delayed. 2 hours minimum. Hamley didn't react. 2 hours might as well have been forever. We started the climb, each step deliberate, the slope narrowing into a path choked with blackened trees. The forest was quiet except for our breathing and the occasional crack of settling wood. When we reached the ridge, the earth still held warmth. Firing pits lined the edge, shell casings, cigarette butts, and fresh boot prints pressed deep in the mud. The treads weren't local. They were military issue, heavy and new. That realization hit harder than any blast. Whoever we were fighting wasn't some ragtag militia. They were trained, organized, disciplined. Hanley's jaw tightened. "We hold here till dark," he said. "Then we move." We dug in, shallow trenches between rocks and roots. Rifles trained on the valley below. I took the left flank, facing down slope. From here I could see Raven Creek burning. Flames climbed from the command hut, smoke trailing into the sky like a funeral signal. Sparks danced where the south wall used to be. Below, small figures moved slowly between wreckage, methodical, unhurried. Mason was behind me with the radio twisting dials. Then through the static, a voice broke through, thin but clear. "This is Reston Command. Confirmed situation over." We froze. Mason keyed the mic, his tone urgent. "Raven Creek under heavy contact. Multiple hostiles. Generator down. Request immediate support." The voice came back after a pause, slower this time. "Copy. Hold position. Do not advance." Then silence. Hamley frowned, head tilting. "That wasn't Reston," he said. Mason's face was pale. "No, it wasn't." The same message repeated again, identical, monotone. "Hold position. Do not advance." Then the line died. The air around us seemed to tighten. No one spoke. From our vantage, the valley flickered with firelight. The outpost reduced to glowing shapes and drifting smoke. Hanley shut off the radio. "That wasn't command," he repeated quietly. My heartbeat filled the silence. 8 slow beats, steady as the triggers pull. I raised the rifle and scanned the tree line. Movement, shadows at the edge, closing in from both flanks, using the folds of ground as cover. "Contact left," I called. Hanley's hand shot up, signaling shift. 2 men pivoted right, the rest opened fire. Our bursts cracked through the ridge, echoing across the valley. The enemy answered instantly, tracers cutting through the dark. They weren't guessing, they had our range. I pressed flat, fired in cycles, 8 seconds up, 8 down. Brass plinked beside my arm. Smoke rolled across the ridge, stinging my eyes. Below, the outpost still burned, and through the haze I saw them. Figures moving through the ruins, not running, just walking, checking each hut one by one. "They're not raiding," Mason said softly. "They're searching for something." Hamley shifted beside me, eyes narrowing. "Then whatever it is, we're not supposed to see it." We adjusted fire downrange, cutting lines across their movement. My rifle's rhythm felt like breathing now, measured, mechanical, endless. The ground shook once more, a shell striking the ridge 20 meters away. Dirt exploded, deafening, blinding. I hit the ground, half buried in dust. The forest went white with heat, then silent again. Through the ringing, I heard Mason yelling into static, Hanley shouting corrections, and above it all the sound of my own breath. 8 in, 8 out. The ridge was ours for now, but in the smoke rising from Raven Creek I could see the next wave already forming. The valley wasn't done with us yet. We didn't have long to think. The forest went quiet after the blast. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you feel like sound itself has died. Smoke drifted through the pines, thin and blue-gray, curling around us like breath from something alive. Hanley leaned over Mason, checking the radio while the rest of us reset positions. "No signal," Mason said, his voice tight. The antenna was bent, display cracked, but he kept trying anyway. Static, then a low hum, then nothing. I crouched behind a splintered log, scanning the slope through the scope. The valley below was a smear of fire and fog. I could see the outpost skeleton glowing through the smoke, pieces of it still burning. The men who'd stayed behind were somewhere down there, fighting or already gone. I tried not to think about it. Hanley motioned for me to check the right flank. I crawled over slick earth, knees and palms cutting against rock and roots. My breath came steady, 8 in, 8 out. That rhythm was the only thing between panic and control. The ridge around us was cratered, charred trees bent like ribs. The smell of burned metal hung in the air, sweet and bitter at once. I saw movement ahead, 2 figures crawling low toward the ridgeline. I froze, watched their silhouettes pass between the trees. Deliberate, trained. These weren't locals or scavengers. They were soldiers, moving in pairs, clean spacing, methodical. I raised my rifle, lined up the sight. 1 step more and I squeezed the trigger. The shot broke the silence, echoing down the valley. The first man dropped, the second dove behind a stump. Return fire came instantly, controlled bursts that snapped bark off the trees around me. I ducked, rolled to cover. Dirt rained across my face. Hanley shouted, "Flank right, push them off the ridge." I moved with 2 others, circling through broken trunks. The firefight turned tight, claustrophobic. Every muzzle flash felt like lightning in a storm with no thunder. One of our guys, Reyes, took a round through the arm, spun backward with a grunt. I dragged him behind the rock while Mason returned fire uphill. The enemy melted into the smoke again, fading like ghosts. "They're testing us," Hanley muttered. "They're mapping the line." I could see it too. They weren't trying to break us yet. They were feeling for the weak spots. Hanley gathered us near the center of the ridge. "We hold here until dark," he said. "Air's still inbound. If comms come back, we mark for strike. No one moves alone." His voice stayed calm, but his eyes flicked to the valley, worried, calculating. The sun was setting, but the light didn't fade. It turned orange, bleeding through the haze until everything glowed like an ember. The fire from Raven Creek had grown into a sheet of rolling heat, the smoke turning gold at the edges. It was beautiful, in a way that made my stomach twist. Below, I could still see the figures moving among the wreckage. They weren't looting, they were searching, sweeping each hut, each bunker, like men looking for something buried beneath the ashes. Hanley whispered to himself, "They want what's under there." None of us asked what he meant. He pointed toward the gully we'd crossed that morning, the same path we used to climb the ridge. "If they reach that, we're done." He split the team again, 2 covering the left flank, 2 watching the gully, Mason on the radio, and me with him. The air was cooling fast. Every exhale came out white. I adjusted the scope again, scanning the tree line below. Through the thinning smoke, I spotted a flicker, movement near the creek bed. I clicked the safety off. Hanley looked at me. "You see it?" I nodded. "They're circling the gully. Then they're coming soon." We waited. Minutes passed like hours. I could hear the faint tick of cooling metal from my rifle, the heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then Mason shouted, "Signal." He twisted the dial, static clearing for just a moment. "This is Reston Command," a voice said, flat, official. "Evac team inbound. Mark your position." Mason's face lit with relief. "Copy. This is Raven Creek Detachment." The voice cut him off. "Repeat. Hold position. Do not advance." The same words as before, same cadence, same tone, then silence. Mason stared at the radio like it had betrayed him. Hanley exhaled slowly. "It's not them," he said. I didn't ask how he knew. You could hear it in the emptiness between each word. Too calm, too even, like someone imitating what they thought command should sound like. Hanley shut the radio off. "We're on our own." The realization hit harder than any blast. No help, no air, just us in the dark. The wind picked up, carrying ash and the faint echo of metal clinking somewhere down the ridge. We all heard it, the sound of equipment being dragged. "They're repositioning," Hanley whispered. The first burst of gunfire came seconds later. Sharp, disciplined, aimed to pin rather than kill. I dropped flat as bullets shredded bark above me. "Return by sector," Hanley yelled. The ridge erupted again. Controlled bursts, measured spacing. I could feel the vibration of rounds hitting soil inches from my arm. I fired in pairs, counting 8 seconds between volleys. The recoil became rhythm. Smoke drifted thick and gray, stinging my eyes. Through it, I saw at least 10 silhouettes moving low, advancing in pairs. They didn't shout or rush. They just moved, deliberate and silent. I hit 2, maybe 3. The rest kept coming. Hanley crawled beside me, his uniform streaked with mud. "We hold till evac," he said, "however long it takes." The ridge shook as a shell landed 20 meters downslope. The air went white again, pressure crushing my chest. I blinked through the dust and saw Mason slumped beside the radio, blood spreading across his shoulder. "He's hit," I shouted. Hanley crawled over, pressed his hand against the wound. "He's breathing," he said. "Keep firing." I reloaded, hands slick with sweat. The metal burned against my skin. The enemy's fire tapered off, then stopped. The forest went silent again. For a heartbeat, I thought it was over. Then I heard it, Short bursts of clicking, rhythmic and cold. Hanley's head turned sharply. They're setting charges. I scanned the slope and caught a glint of metal. 3 men kneeling beside a crate, running wires. Hanley raised his rifle, fired twice. 2 bodies fell. I followed with 3 more shots, hitting the third. We slid down the ridge, boots sliding through dirt. When we reached the crate, the markings froze us in place. U.S. military stencil, clean and new, not local. These aren't theirs, Hanley said, voice low. They were planted here before we ever arrived. He didn't get to finish. A burst of automatic fire tore through the trees. Hanley staggered, clutching his side, blood blooming dark. He dropped to one knee, but kept shooting, refusing to fall. I pulled him behind the crate, pressed my hand over the wound. Hold pressure, he gasped. You keep the high ground. Don't let them take it. His voice was fading, but his eyes were sharp. I wanted to argue, but I knew he was right. He grabbed my wrist, pushed me away. Go. I moved back up the ridge, crawling through ash and dust. My heart pounded, my breath mechanical. 8 in, 8 out. Below, the enemy regrouped, shapes weaving through smoke. I switched to single fire, hit them off one by one. The radio crackled faintly beside Mason. Evac team inbound, 5 minutes. Mark your position. I grabbed the last flare from my vest, fired it high. The red trail burned against the dark sky, cutting through the haze. The valley answered with the deep thrum of rotors, helicopters sweeping low. The sound rolled through the mountains, heavy and real. I looked back once. Hanley was still breathing, eyes half open. We're going home, I said, though it didn't feel true. The ridge below was burning, the outpost gone, but the heartbeat in my chest kept its rhythm. 8 in, 8 out. We just had to last a little longer. The flare still burned overhead when the rotors broke through the clouds, low and fast, their roar shaking the treetops. For a second, the noise felt like salvation, a sound big enough to cut through the nightmare, but it vanished behind the ridge as quick as it came. I stayed low, rifle steady, eyes sweeping the smoke for movement. The valley below was lit in flickering orange, the fires from Raven Creek painting everything in sickly color. Mason was alive, barely. Hanley still clutched his side, his face white as paper, but his weapon rested across his lap, finger on the trigger. They'll try again, he rasped. Before the birds touched down, he was right. You could feel it in the air, that static tension before a storm breaks. The enemy didn't retreat, they waited. I could hear them shifting in the tree line, faint metallic clicks and muffled footfalls. They weren't leaving. They were getting ready for the final push. Hold the ridge, Hanley said again, and then coughed, blood flecking his sleeve. I nodded and took my post by the rocks, sighting down the gully. The forest swayed below, the smoke moving like breath through ribs of black pine. Every sound was magnified, the drip of sap, the crack of wood, my own pulse beating against my helmet strap. Then it came, not shouting, not a charge, just gunfire, controlled, ruthless, cutting through the air in bursts that found their mark. Bullets snapped past my face, chips of bark stinging my skin. I returned fire, slow and methodical, counting out my rhythm. 8 shots, breathe, reload. The recoil became a heartbeat, keeping time with my lungs. Beside me, the others fired in sync, short bursts, deliberate. The enemy advanced through the smoke like a tide. No panic, no chaos, just steady pressure. Whoever led them had done this before. They're flanking right, someone yelled. Hanley barked orders between gasps, his voice still calm despite the blood soaking his vest. Hold sectors, stay low. We shifted right, repositioning behind a cluster of rocks. My rifle barrel was hot enough to smoke. I saw 3 of them moving up the gully, fast, low, rifles ready. I waited until they hit the open stretch, then squeezed off 3 rounds. 2 fell. The third staggered but kept moving. The others finished him. The smell of gunpowder mixed with ash and diesel until the air tasted like metal. Hanley's voice came through the smoke again. Listen. The gunfire paused for a heartbeat, then silence. A faint, rhythmic clicking drifted from below, steady and unnatural. My stomach dropped. Charges, Hanley said, voice barely audible. They're rigging the ridge. I caught sight of the glint, metal wire running from tree to tree. If they brought the ridge down, the outpost below would be buried, and us with it. Hanley didn't wait. He pushed himself up, blood soaking through his sleeve. Move, he shouted, and we slid downhill, dirt and ash pouring around us. My boots slipped on wet roots. I hit the ground, rolled, kept going. The lower slope glowed faintly from firelight, and through the haze I saw them. 3 men crouched over a crate, one holding a detonator, the other spooling line. Hanley fired first. 2 clean shots. I followed with 4 more. The detonator clattered into the dirt. When I kicked open the crate, the sight froze me. Clean, wrapped explosives stamped with American serials. New, not scavenged, not local. Hanley's voice was hollow. They're ours. He barely finished the words before a burst ripped through the smoke. He spun, hit hard, and fell against the crate. I dropped beside him, firing blind into the haze. The shots came back, snapping wood and dirt around us. "Stay down," I shouted, pressing my hand over his wound. His blood was hot against my palm. "You keep to high ground," he gasped. "Don't let them take it." His voice broke, but his eyes never wavered. I wanted to argue, but there was no time. He pushed me once. Firm. Go. I crawled up through smoke and flame, each breath dragging fire through my throat. The ridge was a nightmare of red light and shadows. The enemy was climbing again, moving in clusters, rifles flashing through haze. I dropped flat, switched to single fire, and started picking them off one by one. Each shot as measured, deliberate. 8 rounds, reload, repeat. The radio crackled weakly near Mason's side. A voice came through, faint but real this time. "Evac team inbound, 2 minutes. Mark your position." I yanked the flare gun from my vest and fired the last round. The red light screamed into the sky, burning against the smoke. Below, the gunfire faltered as the thrum of rotors filled the valley. The helicopters came in low, searchlights cutting through fog. I grabbed Hanley under the arms, dragging him toward the clearing. His weight felt doubled, dead muscle and gear grinding against the dirt. Every meter felt like a mile. "Almost there," I told him, though he couldn't answer. The floodlights hit us, white and blinding. A line dropped. I hooked the harness around his chest and gave the signal. He rose slowly, spinning above the firelight, disappearing into the smoke. The crewman shouted for me to clip on. I hesitated, looking back at the ridge. Flames licked through the trees, turning the valley below into a sea of orange. Raven Creek was gone. I could see the creek glowing faintly beneath the smoke, winding like a vein through black earth. The generator pit flickered once and went dark for good. I clipped on and felt the pull. As I lifted above the ridge, the ground fell away, the outpost shrinking into a scar of fire and shadow. The air smelled like metal and rain. My hands shook, but I kept counting my breath. 8 in, 8 out. The rotors drowned out everything else. For a moment, it sounded like the heartbeat of something still alive. We touched down at Camp Reston just before sunrise. The rotors kicked up dust and the stench of burned fuel. And for a second, I thought I was still back in that valley. Hanley was the first off the bird, barely conscious but alive, his skin gray under the stretcher lights. Mason followed next, pale and shaking, his shoulder wrapped tight in blood-stained gauze. I stayed until the crew dragged me out, my hands still clenched around the rifle like I'd forgotten how to let go. The medics swarmed the landing pad, voices overlapping, boots slapping against wet concrete. But it all sounded distant, muffled, like hearing through water. They loaded Hanley into the ambulance host. His eyes flickered open long enough to meet mine. He didn't say anything, just gave one slow nod before the doors closed. Then the engines roared, and he was gone. Mason was taken next. I sat down on the tarmac, boots caked with mud, fingers trembling, the smell of diesel thick in my throat. For the first time in hours, no one was shooting at me, and that silence hit harder than the gunfire. A debrief started before the sun cleared the hills. They separated us into tents one by one, questioning each survivor like we were suspects instead of soldiers. I gave them everything: times, coordinates, fire patterns, ammunition counts, even the exact minute the generator died. 7:10, first contact 800, last shot 14:30. I recited it like scripture. The officer taking notes barely looked up. His pen scratched steady, mechanical. When I mentioned the voice over the radio, the one that sounded like Reston but wasn't, he paused only long enough to say, "Probably a signal ghosting from the mountains." Not uncommon. I knew he was lying. You could always tell when someone used that practiced tone, the one that meant, "This conversation is over." By noon, the report was written. Isolated engagement, unknown hostile force, outpost destroyed, survivors evacuated. That was the entire entry. 8 hours of hell turned into 4 sentences. Nothing about the explosives with American markings, nothing about the interference, nothing about the calm voice that told us to hold position while the valley burned. They called it routine, a word that made my stomach turn. 2 days later, the drones swept the site. The footage came back showing only ash, twisted metal, and the curve of the creek cutting through black soil. Raven Creek was declared non-essential territory. No further operations planned. It was as if the place had never existed. Hanley lived, but he never went back to the field. Mason went stateside for surgery. The rest of us were reassigned, split across different units before we'd even healed. It felt deliberate, like command wanted us scattered, too far apart to compare stories. When I was discharged from the field hospital, they handed me a thin manila folder, my statement, a form, and a line stamped at the bottom, "Mission closed." I read it twice, folded it once, and slipped it into my pack. That night I lay on the cot listening to the hum of the base generator. 9 beats, then a short cough. The sound crawled down my spine. For a second I thought it would stop at the ninth hum, just like Raven Creek's, but it didn't. It kept running, and that's how I knew I was still alive. 2 weeks later, I was reassigned east, near Asabad. New faces, same war. The landscape was different but smelled the same. Diesel, mud, iron, and fear. Nights came with the same static whispers on the radio, the same hollow wind between the tents. The report from intelligence labeled the Raven Creek incident localized ambush. The word ambush made it sound quick, clean, like something you could survive and forget. But it wasn't quick. It stretched over every second, burned into every breath. During follow-up briefings, I asked twice about the explosives we'd found. Both times the answer was the same. Old coalition ordnance repurposed by insurgents. That didn't fit. The serial numbers were too new, the casing too clean. Someone had planted those charges long before we arrived. Someone who knew the terrain and the timetable. When I mentioned that to the intel officer, he closed his notebook and said, "Noted. End of discussion." I realized then that the truth was classified somewhere above survival. Hanley was evacuated to Germany for recovery. Mason made it back to the States. The others faded into new assignments, new names on different rosters. None of us stayed together. It was like the Army wanted the memory itself to dissolve. On my last day before transfer, I walked to the memorial wall near the airfield. Lewis's name was there, carved clean among the fallen. I stared at it longer than I meant to, tracing the letters with my thumb. The air smelled of hot metal and jet exhaust, same as Raven Creek before the first shot. It hit me all at once. The sound of the generator, the taste of iron in the rain, the moment Lewis's breath froze in the fog. Every piece of it came back. A logistics officer stopped beside me, clipboard tucked under his arm. "You were Raven Creek, right?" he asked. I nodded. He hesitated, then said quietly, "That site's sealed. Command doesn't want anyone near it." He walked off before I could reply. I just stood there watching a convoy lift off into the haze, rotor wash stirring dust around the wall. That night, I cleaned my rifle one last time before shipment. The oil smelled sharp, grounding. It helped quiet the noise in my head. When lights went out, the base generator coughed on its 9th beat. I froze, waiting for it to die like before, but it didn't. The rhythm carried on into the dark, steady and alive. For the first time since Raven Creek, I didn't count my breathing. I just listened and let the hum remind me that not every silence meant death. It's been more than 10 years since Raven Creek, but the rhythm never left me. 9 hums, 1 cough, then silence. It plays in my head some nights when everything else goes quiet, like the valley still has a heartbeat, faint but rating. People ask sometimes what it felt like out there, as if you can put that kind of thing into words. I tell them it wasn't fear, not the kind they imagine. It was focus. You breathe, move, count, and try not to think about the next second, because thinking is what gets you killed. The fear comes later, when the noise stops and the world around you refuses to make sense again. Years after the incident, I went back through the official records, hoping to find something that matched what we lived. There was nothing. No mention of the false radio voice, no trace of the American-made charges, no reference to the way the enemy moved, like they'd been trained alongside us. The report was sealed under routine incident. That word still bothers me. There was nothing routine about that day. The men who survived scattered across postings, different continents, different wars. For a while, we kept the group chat alive. Short messages, black humor, small pieces of the story traded like confessions. But as time passed, the replies thinned. First Mason stopped writing, then Torres, then the rest. Eventually, it was just silence, like the outpost itself had taken their voices too. I stayed in long enough to see the next generation of soldiers rotate through the same valley. They called it by a different name now, something sterile and bureaucratic. None of them knew what had been buried there. The map showed clean lines and new coordinates, but the ground still held bones. Every so often, supply convoys would pass near the creek bed and report strange interference, radios cutting in and out, power fluctuations, static that sounded almost like words. Command blamed terrain. I didn't. I kept the file from that night in my pack, a single folder with my statement and a few faded photos. The paper smells like oil and smoke even now. Sometimes I open it just to remind myself it was real. After my discharge, I tried to leave the noise behind. Civilian life had its own kind of quiet, but not the peaceful kind. The hum of traffic outside my window always sounded too much like the generator. The flicker of streetlights reminded me of muzzle flashes. Sleep came in fragments. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the ridge again, the fire washing over the treetops, the shape of men moving through smoke, the steady cough of that machine echoing through my chest. I told myself it would fade, but it never did. One winter, curiosity pulled me back. I went looking for Raven Creek on a map. It wasn't there anymore. The coordinates now pointed to an empty patch of terrain, labeled restricted corridor. No roads, no trails. I asked around through old contacts, but every mention hit a dead end. The area had been scrubbed from operational history. No one wanted to talk about it. One analyst told me off the record that the site had been cleared by a private contractor, not the military. That detail sank like a stone in my gut. It confirmed what I'd always suspected, that we hadn't stumbled into someone else's war that day. We walked into a cleanup. Years later, while working a civilian logistics job near an airfield, I caught that smell again, the sharp bite of hot diesel cutting through the night air. It stopped me cold. For a second, I was back there, standing in the mud with the sound of the creek whispering below. I could almost hear the radio static, Hanley's voice calling orders through smoke, Mason yelling over interference. It passed, but not completely. It never does. When I dream, it's not the fighting I remember. It's the waiting, the hours before dawn, the count in my head, the pulse of the generator echoing through the trees. Every hum felt like a question, and every cough felt like an answer I didn't want to know. Sometimes I wonder what really happened in that valley, what they found beneath the outpost once we were gone. Whatever it was important enough to bury every trace of it, including us. But memory doesn't obey classification. It stays. It lingers in smell and sound and rhythm. 9 beats, 1 cough, then silence. I still keep my rifle cleaned, even though I'll never fire it again. The oil on the rag smells the same, and that smell steadies my hands when nothing. It raises what makes it sound. People think healing is meaningless. He's the killer. People think healing is meaningless. What do you want? Breathe in, breathe out, count to 8. It's the only way I know how to stay steady. Raven Creek is gone from the maps, erased from files, but I can still see it clear as daylight. The bend of the river, the mist in the pines, the shimmer of smoke hanging low over the water. The hum starts again in my head, soft and steady, and I listen because it's all that's left of the men who were there. Some nights, when the world outside is too quiet, I let it run through me. 9 hums, 1 cough, until the rhythm fades into sleep. And for a little while, the silence doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like the valley still breathing somewhere out there, waiting for morning that never comes. The valley may be gone, but its echoes still travel through the static. Some stories never make it into the reports. They live in the dark between transmissions, carried by those who made it out. If you've come this far into the story, you already know Raven Creek isn't just a name on a forgotten map. It's a warning. If you want to hear more untold missions, classified disappearances, and haunted accounts buried in military silence, don't leave without subscribing. Hit that bell so you never miss what they tried to erase. I'm Captain Rebel. Thank you for watching. And remember, some frequencies were never meant to be found.